Hi, I'm Eleanor, and welcome to this week's edition of the Intuition Lab. Today I'm going to be talking about the best and longest relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. We spend so much time worrying about our relationship with others, but what about the longest and, like I said, hopefully the best relationship you'll ever have, the one that will last your entire life, the one with you? But sometimes it's hard to know how to be in a good relationship with yourself because we are taught early on to focus outwardly, and obviously to function in society, it's very important. But I think to really show up fully in society, we need to have the best possible relationship with ourself. So, how do you do that? I would say that you need to use your intuition to know a few very important things, and that would be who you are, what you want in life, know what action is best for you at this point in time, knowing when it's time to move on, knowing how to have the life you want, and how to love yourself. Be someone worth loving. Now, we all have inherent worth because we exist, but sometimes we make it very difficult for people to care for us. So, how do you use your intuition to know who you are? Well, first, you need to cultivate your intuition to learn how it is that you connect and how you tune in. And I encourage you to refer to some of my earlier episodes about knowing how you best connect with your intuition and if you're hearing your intuition or fear or anxiety. But I think that when we are presented with endless options in this world, some have far more resonance for us, and sometimes it depends on the point in time in our lives. But some have more resonance for us than others. And if some of these options really run counter to what is expected of you, that causes friction in your life. But if you know your intuition, you really use it to hone in on who you are and make choices that support you, that are beneficial for you. So you know who you are, it's easier to determine what you want. When you know what you want, it's easier to discern which action is best for you at this point in time. And also to know that if something is not working, it's time to move on. Also, once you have a keen sense of your identity, then you know the type of life you want for yourself, and you're more open and receptive to the intuitive cues that help get you on that path. And your intuition can also help you love yourself. I personally find that when I am doing something that is draining or not in my best interest, I definitely feel it. Sometimes through emotions first, like sadness or apprehension. But more often than not, it's just a clear knowing that this is not for me. So, however, you get signs from the universe, it can tell you whether or not something you're doing is in alignment with loving yourself. Now, another way to foster this loving relationship with yourself is to know when to change, how to evolve, how to and when to drop identities that no longer serve you. There are lots of jokes about people who peaked in high school or peaked in college and are still acting like that 30, 40, 50, sometimes even 60 years later. And we laugh at them for holding on to maybe something that was truly a high point in their life, but how many other high points have they just disregarded or opportunities they've torpedoed, holding on to this identity that no longer serves you? So, our intuition always gives us nudges when it's time to evolve, things that you have done forever. You not only know that you need to change, but you find it easier to give it up. I'm going to use another example from my own life. I used to be a cocktail blogger, and I started doing it around the time Mad Men came out. And the blog is no longer around. It's called Reformed Cynic. But I really enjoyed going and having a couple of cocktails and, in general, drinking a lot more than I do now. And one day, about 8 or 9 years ago, a little voice inside of me said, "You know what? You really don't need to do this anymore." And I also should mention I have a family history of alcoholism, both sides of my family. But I found it very easy to curtail my drinking and to go months without having a drink. I am not completely sober, but I don't feel like I identify with someone who needs to drink. I do it occasionally, but it doesn't, it isn't that part of me anymore. I am not the cocktail person. I still have a good body of knowledge about cocktails and wines and spirits, but it's more encyclopedic at this point. And I knew that I'd learned through hard lessons earlier in life that it was time for me to drop that identity. And a few years down the line from that decision, it came out through some blood work at, a physical, that continuing to drink at the volume I did would have been truly detrimental for me. And it also induced me to make other changes in my diet and in my life. But things just start to feel wrong. Sometimes it almost feels like you need to shed your skin like a snake or, a caterpillar that you're evolving into something different. So you leave your cocoon and here you are, this butterfly or winged, glorious creature, and you can't be the crawling caterpillar, cute as you were before. So, part of this intuitive fostering of a good relationship with yourself is knowing when it is time to change even if you know you will have to maybe cut friendships or walk back from doing things you once enjoyed. But it's less of a problem because the person you've become doesn't enjoy that anymore. And I'm going to just take this opportunity to lead it into a real encouragement for you to take action as soon as those first intuitive nudges and glimmers begin. That is an incredible way to practice self love. When you take action and the first little whispers and nudges from your intuition start to appear, often prevents major upheaval. Sometimes the upheaval is unavoidable. But if we listen to our intuition, even if we are in the blast radius, as it were, we're often less affected than we would be, and we are able to just navigate the debris with greater ease. So I encourage you, as soon as you start to feel that something has changed, you know, take action in the way that you're being guided to do. It's a great way to have a wonderful relationship with you because you are getting yourself out of situations that no longer serve your highest purpose with the minimum amount of drama. Your intuition can also point you to where you're going next. So sometimes in dealing with ourselves, we fight, our next steps in life because it involves a lot of change. It involves saying goodbyes. Sometimes it involves fighting our own ego because we just have this whole impression of who we were. And that turns out to be false for us now. But we don't want to let go of it because maybe we've literally invested decades, lots of money, that sometimes you just know that there is a new place for you to belong. So if you feel like you're in this transition period, I encourage you to just breathe deeply, get grounded, get centered. And if you need to, just do something I often recommend, which is to either open a voice note or take notes and just ask your higher self, where am I meant to go next? And be open to the images and sounds and scents and other impressions you get, because that will help you you know, become the person who belongs in those spaces. So if you feel that it's time for you to sell your home in a snowy location and move somewhere where it's warm all the time or most of the time, you might get an impression of you know, walking to a beach or going out for a morning walk or a morning coffee somewhere and just seeing palm trees and lots of sunshine, right? That's just one example, but it's a way your intuition can point you towards where you want to go next. However, if, everyone around you is saying we should do that and you literally see yourself opening your back door and looking out at the snow and thinking how wonderful it all is, well, that's your answer too. Another thing that will help you have a better relationship with yourself is to find the courage to acknowledge the need for change and follow through on the guidance you've been given, even if it's scary, even if it runs counter to pretty much everything you thought you ever wanted. But it's not enough to just, it's like being in a relationship with another person. It's not enough to know what needs to be done. You have to do it. And that applies to yourself as well. So when you start getting these intuitive nudges to do something differently or to do a thing or hold back, follow through on that. That is a wonderful way to honor yourself and prove your love. Now, I've talked a lot about a few ways to have a good relationship with yourself, but what happens when you don't have a good relationship with yourself? And I say this as someone who, for many years, and in some ways, still don't have the best relationship with myself. How does this manifest? I find it makes you very energetically porous, that it's hard for you to remain in your own energy. And I have an episode I encourage you to listen to about staying in your own energy, to just, hear other people's perspectives and still make decisions for yourself based on your own life. So it isn't even just people. You are very susceptible to, oh, just the energetic influences around you. Like if you moved into a home that formerly was the site of a lot of conflict, you might start to be unduly influenced by that as well and find your thoughts and your actions becoming more and more aggressive or angry. You might also, as I mentioned, find yourself being easily influenced by others and the circumstances around you. It's very hard for me. It's very difficult to maintain your own equilibrium unless you are rooted in your sense of self, have a good bit of energetic shielding around you, which is something I definitely recommend you do, ridding yourself of others' energy, putting a shield around yourself so that your own energy can come out and be expressed more readily. Um, that will, if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you may not even recognize that you are being influenced by others until you find yourself acting in ways one day and living in ways that don't really align with who you are. You might also fall prey to a lot of poor me victim thinking, and that's not to dismiss you if you are actually a victim of something, but in many cases, poor childhoods, abuse, I can relate to those too. You know, at some point, the people who hurt me when I was a child, some are dead, some are very infirm, some I have no clue where they are or what they're doing, and I don't care. But I cannot allow the actions of these people to continue to affect me and my life and the way I show up decades later. So if you find yourself falling into a lot of poor me thinking, it is an energetic signature that can block you from experiencing situations and having new ideas about ways to liberate yourself from whatever it is that's holding you down. So, if you are falling into the trap of a lot of poor me type thinking, work on the relationship with yourself first. Because if you really love yourself, you don't allow other people to treat you a certain way. And even if they treat you a certain way and you cannot get out of it, you do not take it personally. You realize it for them being abusive, them having their own issues, right? And knowing that you are not causing it. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you might also feel like you're battered about by the winds of life instead of choosing your next step. You might feel that you just get pushed from thing to thing to thing. And sometimes when you live in flow, you do feel that you naturally flow from one thing to the next, but it feels good and hopeful and comfortable. Not, oh gosh, you're being pushed from one bad job into another or one bad relationship into another, right? You're not battered about by the winds of life. You, in most cases, have a choice, and those choices begin with you pulling your energy back into yourself, working on cultivating love, respect, comfort, safety for yourself and by yourself, right? Just so you feel that you are not pushed around by others' choices. Also, and I speak from personal experience. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself and you let yourself be influenced by others, you let other people's sticky energy infiltrate yours, you feel like you've just been totally put upon, there's nothing you can do to better your circumstances, and you're just pushed from pillar to post, right? One day you will look in a mirror and you won't recognize yourself. Or you'll just sit there and you'll catch your thoughts and realize this is not the way I used to think, and this is not the way I want to think. I mean, we all change, right? We all grow. Most of us change perspectives several times in our lives. But if you look in the real or imagined internal mirror and you don't recognize yourself, it really means that you have not been prioritizing yourself. You have not been living a life that is aligned with your true purpose. Not recognizing yourself means that you did not have a hand in, you did not have a conscious hand in all of the little choices and little decisions made or not made that brought you to where you are today. So, what do you get out of having a good relationship with yourself? You get self knowledge so that when options are presented to you, you have paths you can pursue. You know whether or not it's right for you. You tend to sabotage yourself less. You know something isn't right for you, and you just say, no, I care for myself too much to do this. You don't seek as much external validation because you turn inward or to your higher self or to God or the universe for validation and ask for signs about whether or not you're on the right path, as opposed to endless attention seeking, endlessly needing other people to tell you that you're wonderful because you know it, right? You know it for yourself. And one of the most rewarding things about having a good relationship with yourself is the ability to say no, even if your ego doesn't want to. If you get what seems like a golden opportunity, but there's just a little feeling in the pit of your stomach that it might not be the best thing for you. If you are really grounded in your own energy, you're tuned into your intuition, and you know what is coming through for you is serving you, then you can say no to things that are not aligned with you. So, to wrap up, to be in a better relationship with yourself, I encourage you to meditate, ground, shield, shed. Find a way to exclude the energy of others in the world, even for a little bit each day, just so that you are focused in who and what you are, and start to make more choices from that. You'll start to have a vision of who you are and who you want to be. And sometimes that vision is just humbly accepting your place in the world and making that the best possible spot, the coziest place in your world for yourself. So, how's your relationship with yourself? I'd love it if you would let me know in the comments. And it's also something I'm going to be talking about later this week and definitely into March in Pathfinders, my free private community. So, if you would like to get tools to help you have a better relationship with yourself through using your intuition in your day-to-day life, I encourage you to join. Sign up details will be in the show notes. So until next week, please show yourself love. Make choices that are right for you, that will help you be your best, your most grounded, your safest, most comfortable self. And I will see you next week. Bye now.